If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility.
The scapegoat. The biblical meaning of it is when someone in the tribe does something that is considered a sin, the priest of that tribe will place the sins of the tribe on the head of that goat. Bear the burden of the tribe, the goat will. Then the priest will send the goat out into the desert to die of thirst, which would erase the sins of that tribe or lift the burden.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does.
The non-biblical definition of a scapegoat is simply to blame someone for something that someone else has done. When something goes wrong, the people look for somebody to blame, like every president who gets into office is blamed for the country's problems. Problems that often began decades or even hundreds of years before the president was even born, because still, something got to bear the burden.
They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You all right? You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
You want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You all right? Yeah. What's wrong?
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
The clips I've been playing are what's called the bystander effect. And I mentioned the scapegoat because I'm talking about taking the initiative. The scapegoat, people who often stand on the front line, are often the ones who get persecuted. You know, like the old saying that no good deed goes unpunished. With the bystander effect, the rule is not to do anything unless someone else does. And the person that does do something is the rule breaker.
We decided to try to create a relatively ambiguous situation in which we could see how people responded. We thought that one kind of thing that comes up that's often hard to tell whether it's a real emergency or not has to do with fire.
You see smoke coming through the vent, and it is ambiguous. What do you do?
There's smoke coming out from under the door in that room where I was filling out the questionnaire.
Almost everybody does that if they face the smoke alone.
So in this video, the only one that's going to be in the room is you. You're going to have to save everybody because people are heavily reliant on other people doing something, because for the most part, people are going to pretty much mind their own business, as it's said in the first law of nature, self-preservation. But every now and again, someone will ignore the first law of preservation and the nurturer will show up. One with the Messiah complex shows up in an attempt to help everybody, and that's going to be you to display that selfless character.
Now let's have you face the smoke with two strangers. One person can be seen glancing at the other. The other is continuing to fill out the questionnaire. It's getting a little more smoky in the room, but nonetheless, you stay in the room. By and large, people surrounded by people who react as if there's nothing wrong don't respond. Everybody sees the other people not reacting, so they create a definition of the situation. No emergency.
Imagine if no one had a selfless nature. Say none had the selfless, nurturing nature of a mother, for example. Imagine if your mother had decided that she wasn't going to get up at 2 a.m. to see what you were crying about and decided to just let you cry yourself to sleep all the time. My intentions are something that needs to be done by you and not something to be pondered on whether you should do it or not. It's not something to think about doing. It's a must do. And it's not something for you to do in your spare time, but rather that it's something that's priority.
Darley and Latine conducted a second experiment. This time, the emergency was clearly defined.
First of all, I would like to thank the two of you for being here today to help out in this study.
In this experiment, one student was asked to communicate via intercom with another student down the hall.
Somebody, give me a little help here, because I'm having a problem. I've got one of these things coming on.
What sounded like a real seizure in the subject's headphones was just a tape recording of an actor playing a role for the experiment.
If somebody would give me a little help. Hello? Could somebody help?
If you knew there was nobody else but you to help, you got up, you opened the door of your room, and you headed off to find the person. On the other hand, if there were 3 or 4 other people present who you heard,
I would like to thank the 3 of you for being here today to help us with this study. We are interested in learning.
you are much less likely to respond yourself.
Somebody give me a little help here. I'm having a real problem right now. Help me out.
The responsibility any individual feels for helping is diffused.